I'm tired.
The Late Morning Program with Nam Ras Podcast.
Thing how like all this stuff becomes like landmines, right? Or like a minefield. Because
funny. Like
how do you navigate it?
When I went to the temple yesterday,
We're rolling, by the way.
okay. They have a little like buffet thing, and then like,
In DC?
yeah,
Oh, they got
super
such a
sick.
good buffet.
You've been there?
No, I've only seen
that's
social
a great-
media.
that's a
I've
great
seen social
buffet.
media.
It's off the hook.
Have
Yeah,
you seen it?
shout out to the DC buffet.
Yeah.
I guess we're giving them
super
some
shout out.
Don't
Sorry,
speak too much.
I guess we're giving them promo, right?
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. That
Anyways,
devotee-
I'm gonna skip this story for the mic, but anyways, go ahead.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
No,
No, tell
go
the
for it.
story.
Go for it.
Okay, so the Prabhu thing, like the person that was checking me out, she was like, she looks up and she starts to say Prabhu, then stops. That happens to me all the time.
Like,
Yeah.
Yeah,
I get
yeah.
that little slight correction all the time. And I always just think it's funny. But anyways.
which is not. It's not just a Hare Krishna thing, right?
No.
The sir, ma'am.
Yeah,
like,
grocery
it's-
store, grocery store, everywhere.
right. But that's just a funny, like, it's sort of its conversion of it
Yeah,
is
totally.
Prabhu Mataji. Okay, cool.
Okay.
cool.
Yeah.
So, welcome to our viewers to the Nam Ras Podcast, the #1 Hare Krishna podcast in the world. I'm so honored to have Lalita Madhava on with us today. Thank you so much for
Thank
joining
you.
us.
Yeah.
Driving up for
This
the
is
podcast.
This is exciting.
Yeah. I just want to say as a preface, I feel like my thoughts on transgenderism have been like basically influenced a lot by media and
How
by
could they not?
and by like I'm a more conservative leaning person.
Mm-hmm.
So there's been a lot of like but at the same time I am very open-minded and I would just love to hear like your story and answering of our questions to just like get a more wholesome or holistic kind of view of transgenderism and that whole thing.
And while we're giving caveats, I mean, I can add since I'm
Yeah.
I'm riding shotgun today, not always here, but happy to be here today. I mean, you know, I don't think it's any secret that like Nam and I, we love each other, and also we like come out very differently on certain things.
Right.
And I feel like maybe I've also been very influenced, not just by media, but also by experiences working in, for instance, the context of like higher ed and like working with,
Oh, yeah, for sure.
you know, LGBTQ,
Yeah.
you know, issues, but also people who identify, you know, as queer and including folks who identify as trans, especially like young adults who do. So that very much shapes sort of my approach. And I think, you know, I mean, I'm getting more and more sick of like labels like conservative, progressive, whatever. Like, but if anything, I think I probably end up maybe leaning a little bit more left than certainly that I think than you do, Nam. So we've had some interesting conversations. That,
Absolutely. And another thing I told you on the phone before we had this podcast was that I'd like to lean this conversation a lot towards like the Krishna conscious aspect and
for sure.
that perspective, because we can talk for hours about the political influence or the whatever kind of is going on in the world with that. But because we're a Hare Krishna podcast, like to kind of bring that Krishna conscious.
and also some of those things have just been like talked to death, I feel like. So what's the point of like
Exactly.
replicating that, you know, when we have such a more, I feel like personally, like we have such rich content just from the bhakti side that we could really kind of get into.
Like the whole thing, like the whole conversation about like upadis and that we're not this body and things like that. That's super fascinating to me.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. So where should we start?
Well, you know, I mean, not to be too trite about it, but should we start with your pronouns? And that has a look. I mean, we just said we're not going to like let's not. Like, we're not going to replicate every other you know, podcast on trans stuff. Like, what are your pronouns?
Yeah. So, you know,
If you just speak into the mic.
right. So, so pronouns and Hare Krishna, like it all actually, for me anyways, it all folds together because, so there's so much noise about people being transgender now, you know, just in a way it's all noise. And I mean, some of it's noise and some of it is people trying to live, and survive. And then a lot of it is noise. So what does that have to do with Hare Krishna, and what does that have to do with pronouns? So I've known that I've been transgender since I was in early childhood.
Oh, wow.
Which, and I grew up in, I was born in 1969, so that's the 70s, 80s, into the 90s, where I learned really quick I had to just hide all that. And there was no scope for that at all that I was aware of.
Yeah.
So, point being that for me, pronouns they're like for other people in a way. It's like how the world perceives me. So I don't like to get too much into, I just wanted to be me, I'm going to express who I am. I'm going to affirm who I am, and the rest of the world will hopefully see that or not. But I'm not going to go around and be like, no, my thing is this or my thing is that.
Do you
Because
correct when if
No,
someone misgenders you?
never.
You don't.
Almost never. Because that would be exhausting, and also, like, who wants to hear that,
Yeah.
So I just, like, politely move along with my life and not worry about that. My thing is to affirm who I am, and that has so much to do with Hare Krishna. Like when I first came to the temple, one of the, maybe the first thing you hear is you're not this body, right? And to me, I was like, oh, you're not this body. That is something I can relate to, because, or I mean, you could debate actually whether it's true if you're not the body or not. But like the problem with the body is it's temporary.
Yeah.
So identifying with the body is an illusory thing because the body's going to go. So here I am, and I'm identifying with a body that I don't have. So I was like, oh, well, this works.
That made sense for you on a level
Yeah.
that maybe for
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not to get too far afield, but I'm also like,
That's where I get from pronouns.
yeah. No.
So it's just a matter of like if pronouns are like a way of affirming who somebody is,
Yeah.
like since I don't generally talk about myself in the third person, although maybe I should try. Actually, I'm a kindergarten teacher, so I do actually.
You're a
sometimes.
kindergarten teacher?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
We can get into that later maybe, but like, but anyway, so I'm just trying to affirm who I am, and I know ultimately I'm a spirit soul,
Right.
and that ultimately this body and this bodily conception is going to go. But the reality is I have to live now here in what I've been dealt, dealt with,
I mean, this is sort of, not to get too much on a tangent, right? But this is what I think for some of us, I'll speak for myself. This is where I feel like it's a little oversimplified to just be like, oh, well, you're not this body, right? Because it's like we are, according to Vedanta, we are actually ultimately, as I like the use of the word ultimate, right? Ultimately, we are, pure spirit, we're Purusha, we're Atma, we're Satchidananda, right? And in this moment, we're embodied.
Yeah.
And both of those things are true simultaneously. I have found it helpful to just like sort of reframe like you are not this body, or I am not. I like the first person version of it better because it's more like a reminder to myself. Like, and I sort of see it as like I am not this body is a shorthand for like I am so much more than this body, or I'm not ultimately this body, or I'm not just this body.
I like that.
Right.
Yeah.
But going back to the sort of like where the trans identity comes in, I feel like it's so interesting that hits differently for you after having like what I imagine is, like you said, like from your childhood, kind of feeling a misalignment with your bodily identification. And all of a sudden you're in a tradition and you're like, oh, like people are actually acknowledging I'm not limited to bodily identification. That was,
right.
I would imagine, sort of refreshing or liberating in a sense.
Well, I mean, it is to a certain extent. And again, like now it is. But back then, I think Well, so full disclosure, I reached out to y'all to be like, hey,
I
do you
love
want
that, by the way.
do you want to talk about this
Yeah.
on the podcast? So I'm not going to say that there's not a little bit of like wanting to aggrandize myself, but at the same time,
Good word.
I also, I think these things are really important.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
went out on a limb, but I think that it's really important to, so yeah, like in the 90s, when I first heard that, and I thought there was no scope for me to affirm who I am as a trans. I had never even heard the word transgender. It wasn't in circulation in the early 90s. So I had no way of even understanding myself on that level. So yeah, okay, you're not the body, great. And so I can work on that, and I can, live in the temple and then do all the things that are going to transcend the bodily concept of life. But how many of us actually are able to live in the temple for a long time?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so, right. So the reason I reached out to y'all is because I had seen an Instagram clip by that Maharaj. I think he was on here, Rasikananda or somebody.
Rasikananda Maharaj, yeah.
Yeah. So he had done a little Instagram. Did I send it to you all? A little
Oh,
Instagram.
no, someone told me about it.
You
though.
I think
Right.
you referenced it or something.
Yes.
But yeah.
So he did a nice clip. It was nice because it was like, we should welcome and accept trans people. Glad he did that.
Yeah.
But his conclusion was, because we're not the body, so we should just not even worry about being trans or this or that or whatever.
Right.
Which is fine for a sannyasi to say. Sannyasis are supposed to say that. But the reality is that most of us, we need to live in the world, and
Yeah.
we need to make peace with our material selves.
Yeah.
So it's unrealistic to say to a trans person or a gay person to just be like, and this happened when I was in the temple. There was one devotee that was gay, and they're like, well, just get married and get over it, or whatever. Just, you're not the body, just get over it, you know?
Yeah.
But that's not something that we say to all devotees. There's a whole Vedic system,
Right.
Get married, work through the ashrams and so on like that. And you all tell me if I'm wrong, but point being, you can live peacefully in your material situation so that you can cultivate your spiritual life.
Absolutely.
Right.
I
Yeah.
completely
Right.
agree with that.
So, but there is no blueprint for
Yeah.
a trans person or a gay person. Or
Right.
a
So
non-binary person
instead
to
it
do
becomes
that.
a kind of like, oh, don't worry about that. as
Yeah, the
opposed to,
advice
like, work through
is
it.
to just don't think about it. Just go, which is
Yeah.
not something that, and it's, yeah. So
Well, also to be fair and maybe to put things in perspective, right? Like you mentioned the 90s. I mean, that was pretty standard even outside of ISKCON, right? If you think about like,
yeah, absolutely.
I mean, I remember when,
100%.
do you remember when Don't Ask, Don't Tell was like a policy in the
Oh, yeah.
US military? And it was actually seen as quite progressive. Like it was like, wow, like
Yes.
this is
Yeah.
a
Yeah,
this is
for
a
sure.
victory for the LGBT community.
Yeah.
At the time, now we look back on it, or now like I have like students, Gen Z or Gen Alpha who look at that and go, oh, like that was horrible. It's like, well, in the perspective of its time, it was actually like a really important move ahead. Or like the idea of being like colorblind in terms of racism
Right.
and stuff,
Yeah,
which
yeah.
now we look at maybe differently. And so, not to make excuses for it, but I just feel like in that context, it's sort of like it would not have been necessarily out of place for someone to be like,
Yeah.
like, yeah, well, that's okay. Just like sort of transcend it, and let's let's just look past gender identity altogether.
Right. Which is better than maybe a church saying you're sinful and you're going to go to
For
hell.
sure. Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So there's, it's not a criticism of the Vedic system. I'm not criticizing. It's, it's because I didn't join Hare Krishna to follow the ashrams. I joined to chant Hare Krishna and,
Right.
to cultivate a relationship with Krishna.
Can I also just like just a minor point, but I really so appreciate you recognizing that like it like appreciating or recognizing that it was like appropriate as a sannyasi for that particular Maharaj, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
And-
that's their job,
Yeah, it's their job.
or at least part of their job.
And you know,
Right.
sometimes I feel like there's not
Better
enough.
they say that than give marriage advice.
Yeah, right.
Forgot we're being recorded.
No,
Sorry, Maharaj.
That's a great hot take. That's a great hot take.
Love the hot takes.
But no,
yeah.
but like right, like to the point of like like in our tradition, in our culture, like there's certain things monastics can and should sort of say,
Yeah,
and those things hit differently and actually aren't as helpful or constructive when it's like someone like who's not a sannyasi saying it, right, and vice versa. So I just wanted to like just recognize. I think that's a really cool nuance.
Oh,
Absolutely. Yeah.
yeah.
Let's go back. Let's rewind. So
Yeah.
tell us where you kind of grew up and then how you got in contact with Krishna consciousness.
Yeah. So yeah, I grew up in Boston. I grew up just outside of Boston. I was born in Boston. So interesting. I don't know if I should share this, but like, so interestingly, my mom and dad, my dad went to Harvard Business School, and so my parents lived in a neighborhood in Boston called Allston.
Yeah.
And they actually lived right across the street from the first Boston Temple.
Oh wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
And now they live close to.
Now they live to the
Wow,
yeah.
wow.
But my mom would tell me that she would go do her laundry because the temple was like a storefront right next to a laundromat, and so she would do her laundry in the laundromat. It's kind of funny, yeah. So, anyways, I grew up there, and I went to Boston University. Oh, so growing up in Boston, the devotees were on the street all the time, like mostly doing Harinam, like chanting, doing kirtan in the street, and distributing books and all that kind of stuff. So
So you're talking about late 70s, right?
no. Well, yes, for sure, but I was not seeing them until like early 80s.
Got it.
So when I was like 14, 15,
Yeah.
me and my friends would hop on the train and go into Boston and go to record stores and buy punk records and stuff like that. And I had this one really good friend, and he's like, "Oh, there's a Hare Krishna distributing books. Let's go argue with him about whether there's God or not." And I was like,
Were you guys like mainly atheists and stuff, or?
I wasn't. He just wanted to have an argument. And I was
Right.
just like, can we leave the guy alone? But anyways, that devotee I actually remember, because I remember he said, "Oh, you guys are into punk. I grew up in Washington, D.C., and I was in the D.C. punk scene." And so that devotee was Bhagavat Purana, who when I moved into the temple, probably like almost 10 years later, was living in the temple. But I remember that because he said the same thing to me when I moved into the temple. So, but anyways, I actually met the devotees when I went to Boston University, and I met Trivikram and this devotee called Leela Vrindavan. At the time, they were Tim and Lael. And yeah, we just became friends through just similar music interests. Mm-hmm. And I remember I had heard of the Cro-Mags at that time, and I'd seen the cover of their record Age of Coral with Nisringadev on it.
Yeah, right.
And so they had that poster in their dorm room, and I'm like, what is that? Like, I've seen that, but I don't know what it is. And they're like, they started going through the whole story, and like in my mind, I'm sort of like having this experience, like, oh my God, this is making a lot of sense. And especially since, I guess to your question of whether I was an atheist, I never actually was an atheist. I was just like, my family was not at all religious when I was growing up, but I had been looking at like Buddhism and, Native American spirituality and this thing and that thing. And when I started hearing this, I was like, oh, there was a real resonance.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So anyway, so they brought me to the temple, and that's how I got into it.
And like regarding your transgenderism throughout that time, what was the, like, you were just suppressing it at
Oh,
that time?
absolutely. Yeah, 100%. Like at that time I had only told one person.
Oh, really?
So yeah, I had been going out with this. I had a pretty serious relationship with this girl in high school, and towards the end of that relationship, I had told her. And anyways, that she was the only one that I had told.
Wow.
And you were saying that like you didn't have necessarily
I didn't
like
even have
the
the
term,
language.
the
No.
language. So if you feel comfortable sharing, like how would you have articulated it then?
I don't think I even knew how to articulate it. I think I didn't know how to articulate it. So I think I just had a long conversation with her about, like, you know, having from an early age, just having this inclination towards femininity, just from early childhood. And yeah, there was just, I used to go to the library and just like search for like, what is going on for me? Like, I don't understand.
Wow.
And I couldn't find anything. There's no internet or anything, you know? And it was just
gosh.
like, yeah. So it was even hard to talk about. There was just no language that I knew. I mean, the language was out there, but it wasn't, I only know that now.
Right.
It wasn't accessible.
So did the Krishna consciousness aspect of it like help in kind of, okay, we're going to separate ourselves from the body because we're not the body. So did that help in like assisting you with kind of like processing that?
You know, I think it was more the other way around, more in that, like, it was more the other way around, where it was more like me being transgender helps me understand Hare Krishna more than Hare Krishna helps me understand being transgender. Because I didn't want to be transgender. I was like, I want this to go away.
Oh,
You know what I mean? So I think if anything, the Hare Krishna thing was like, I was like, oh, well, maybe I can transcend, you know. But it wasn't entirely that, though. You know, I wouldn't be sitting here talking with y'all if I wasn't genuinely attracted to Krishna Bhakti. Because like I said, like, you know, I've known people that were like, oh, I'm going to join because I'm gay and maybe it can make me ungay or something like that.
Right. They're looking for a solution to,
Yeah. And then it just doesn't play out.
Yeah.
Which,
Wow.
you know, but anyways, and, you know, I didn't actually really when I actually joined the temple, I had been living, at that point, I had stopped going to the temple for a couple years and I was living in Washington, D.C. I was really embedded in the punk scene, the sort of punk and like activist scene and things like that. And, you know, I sort of went through this period of just being like, oh my God, I have to either be transgender, like figure this out. Like I cannot take another second of not just living who I am, or I have to go and really make a spiritual dedication, you know, and, you know, really dedicate myself to spiritual life. And that looked a lot easier, believe it or not. And it wasn't, I mean, again, it's not to make it, you know, it was the best decision I've ever made in my life, ultimately. But like, you know, it was really, I was literally walking down the road and being like, it's either this or that. And I did that. So.
Right. So then as far as, and then you got, like, tell us about, you found a guru, you got initiated.
Mm-hmm.
When was that?
Yeah, you know, I should say the thing that really so I liked the temple. I liked the thing that really made Hare Krishna come together for me was reading Satsvarupa Maharaj's books. Like that was the real unlock. I think for a while I had, I was like, I like this, but it's kind of heavy. There's all these brahmacharis and they're like, come on, drop out of school, get in the van kind of thing. And I'm like, I'm not doing that. like that's just not something I'm going to do, And then, so Trivikram and Leela Vrindavan, they were disciples of Satsrupa Maharaj, and they gave me, the first book I read by him was Begging for the Nectar of the Holy Name. And I was just like, that whole tone, it just resonated so much with me. Just that, the level of humility in his writing and self-reflection and everything. That was just the unlock for me.
Was
I got
gender a
into
part of
that.
it? Because I ask, and not to like stereotype, but like we often think of like the sort of the feminine as far as like the softness, the vulnerability, the nurturing.
Yeah.
The masculine
Yeah.
as being like you said, kind of like harsher. And one of the things I've appreciated personally as a reader of Satsrupa Maharaj's books also is like kind of in a way that not many devotees were doing at the time. There was there was a kind of a softness to it that I appreciated.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. That was the unlock for me. I mean, I don't know if I ever looked at it in terms of feminine or masculine, but you could look at it in terms of, I was like, on the one side, I had like I said, some of those devotees that were the like, in, rather pushy brahmacharis, they became friends later on. And I think actually at that time, mid-90s, I think ISKCON in general, am I wrong in feeling like that there was a general shift of there's other ways to be a devotee other than grinding on the Christmas
I would agree
on
with
the Christmas marathons. I did do marathons though, by the way.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, just like on this, it's one of the things I was thinking about was, like it sounds like kind of coming into a space where again there's this kind of like, oh, we can start to like disentangle from like bodily identification and transcendence and spirituality, but then even joining a temple, right? Like what some might consider a very gender segregated space.
Oh my God, 100%.
Right, like literally in the sense of the room split down the middle,
Totally.
or depending on right, and like certain activities being very gendered, roles being very gendered, like all this stuff, and then especially you throw into the mix something like the sort of like what I think of as kind of like a very like masculine modality of the Sankirtan devotee and roughing it, living out of a van, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Like, I just wonder like what that experience is like for you if you're like kind of coming at it from this experience of having this transgender identity as, as something that you're grappling with.
Yeah. I got so fortunate. I think the period of time that I lived in the Boston temple, like, mid 90s to end of the 90s, it was just a really, I don't know, at least for me, it was a really good mood in the temple, and there was leeway for different types of devotional service. And the temple president at that time, Sadhu Sangananda, at least for me, I don't know if this was true for everybody that was living there at the time, but at least for me was like directing me to services that would, he knew I wasn't going to make it in the van distributing books. So he's like, okay, you can work in the kitchen. You can go and buy boga and stuff like that, help out in the pujari room and stuff like that,
Did you come out to anyone at the temple?
I did. So like Trivikram and Leela Vrindavan, I came out to them. And then a few others later. But, again, it was, I was really just trying to just really try and really take the spiritual path and just not, really try and transcend all the bodily concepts.
That's something I want to talk about a little bit more, because devotees watching this could oversimplify and say, okay, why are we even talking about this? Because we're supposed to transcend this. But the point you were making earlier is that of course, if you're like, I don't know if you were saying this, but the way I think of it is that, okay, if you're really, really advanced and you can give up those upadhis,
Yes.
then yeah, absolutely. But we are embodied living entities, like, and we might not be at the level where we, give up kind of the identification of that.
Yeah.
So,
or we could give it up superficially.
or
but
give
we're
it
actually-
exactly,
give it up
exactly. Great
superficially,
point.
yeah.
You can give it up superficially. So, I mean, what would you say? Like, let's kind of talk a little bit more about devotees living in their bodies, but at the same time trying to practice Krishna consciousness, but at the same time not ignoring things like that the body either
Yeah.
needs or identifies as, or
Yeah. Well, to me, it's kind of simple, actually, in a way, because so for me, being transgender does not get in the way of practicing Krishna consciousness at all. I mean, I got a lot of other things that get in the way, but that's not one of them. Like Netflix and stuff like that. That gets in the way.
right.
But that's not one of the things that get in the way. And I will even include that, like, association we know is so important to Krishna consciousness. But all my devotee friends, it's not even an issue. I feel accepted 100% by all my devotee friends, so no problem there.
Well, it sounds like you chose good devotee friends, right? It sounds like you
Yeah,
found
you're
your
lucky.
people.
You're
I mean,
lucky.
I am lucky, and like I said, it's a little bit of a product of the time. There was just a lot of really nice. I mean, there's always nice devotees around, but you're right. I got lucky. So in that sense, it's not a problem. But but to me, the bigger question is more. Comes down to just one word, which is acceptance. So I can be accepted by my friends, and that's fine, and that's no problem. But what about the temple in general, or the movement in general, whether it's ISKCON or whether it's another Gaudiya Sangha or whatever, because as far as I know, there's no language or there's no place for the LGBT community within at least what's been given, aside from just transcend the body.
Right.
But
That's true.
but there's so much leeway and actually rich culture, and it's so great that it's there. Like, so for example, I think it's great that you can go to Loy Bazaar and buy really nice dhotis or saris or whatever in a way that could be construed as materialistic, but in a way it can also be like, okay, this is what's helping me to be a devotee. But all that stuff's gendered, right? But it's so background that we don't even think about it. Unless you're a transgender, then you will think about it. So it does boil down to just this question of acceptance. So if I'm going to go to a Sunday feast, am I going to really be accepted by everybody there at the Sunday feast?
Yeah.
I actually don't know the answer to that question. So, and I haven't tested it out, by the way. So, and by the way, I don't know if we said this before we started rolling, but there's so much noise in the culture at large around transgender acceptance, but it all boils down to this one word of acceptance. Do we accept transgender people or not? And what does that, and so on the one hand, it's like, so there's that question, are we going to accept them or not? So we can say, if the answer is no, then we're going to adjust our culture, whether it's the Hare Krishna culture or the larger culture, to say no. And we're going to say no to this, 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 and this, and this, and not allow transgender people or LGBTQ people in general a dignified place in society. I don't love the word dignified, but like, an accepted place in society. Or we're going to say yes. And then it starts to look at, well, what is that going to look like?
Right. Well, this is what I'm thinking. Because like, do we need to define what accept means, right? Because someone could be like,
Right.
"Oh, I accept," but
Right.
what do you when you say accept? What do you mean, or what do you
Well,
envision?
to me, to me, I can pick up from an individual whether they're accepting who I am or not, and then I'll feel comfortable, and then we'll be like, so like you asked about pronouns, for example. So, that's one way we're going to accept or not accept, and we have. So trans people have always existed. I think I can state that as a fact. It's definitely my opinion, but I think you could almost say it's a fact. And yet the culture at large has not always accepted trans people. So that shift is going to take some time. But the starting place, I hope, is to say we accept that these people, we accept who they are. And so it's going to take some time to reorder our society and our way of thinking to make that happen. And for me as a trans person, I'm very, very happy for that, to have wiggle room and mistakes and try one thing and try another thing, as long as I know the acceptance is there. And so the same is true for, I don't know, what do we want to say, ISKCON, or do we want to say Gaudiya culture in general?
I think ISKCON is like the
Okay.
biggest.
So ISKCON in general, it would be nice if ISKCON would say we accept trans people, or actually at this point I would say LGBTQ people.
Yeah, I was going to say that.
Do we accept them or not? And what does that look like?
Yeah.
And, I think sometimes if you start with the acceptance, many things are just going to fall into place.
Yeah.
And especially over time. So, but yeah, like, what does that look like? Let me ask you all a question, because you're more in touch with ISKCON, I think, than I am. I do go to the temple.
He's wearing it.
I know you're. Yeah.
He's repping
Loud
hard.
and proud right there.
Yeah.
So have you all ever heard of a gay marriage in ISKCON?
Yes.
You have? Awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's awesome. So, I mean, I had never even heard of that.
I think Krida and Nanda Maharaj might have.
Kriya Nanda Maharaj, I think.
Like including a ceremony and all that.
Kriya
Yeah,
Nanda-
yeah.
Yeah.
I think Kriya Nanda Maharaj's was like a blessing ceremony, not necessarily, but I think more than that. Like, I mean, I don't want to necessarily, like, if there's confidence, I don't want to betray confidence or whatever, but I've attended same sex,
Yeah, that's amazing.
vivaha yagya, like traditional,
Yeah.
Like an ISKCON one?
like but then we
Wait, did we go to the same one?
no, we'll talk offline. I don't know if we're at the same one. I was wearing a disguise. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the one you're talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was there.
You were there, right?
Yeah, I was there.
Yeah, so that was, I mean, no, the question of was it in
ISKCON.
ISKCON? I'm like,
Yeah,
it wasn't,
like,
I wasn't
that's
at an ISKCON temple. The person
Yeah,
officiating it was like, I mean, he came up in ISKCON. He was trained in ISKCON. He was
Right.
wearing Gaudiya Vaishnav tilak, chanting all the mantras. Like, it
Yeah.
was like, so at what point did you even define
So
like what
I
is
didn't
in
bring
ISKCON
that
or
up,
not?
just for clarity, I didn't bring that up as a criticism, but more as an example of what does acceptance in that case
Right.
Yes.
look like.
Yes.
So, like, what does acceptance look like for me if I post up at the Sunday feast and the women are over here and the men are over here, and where am I going to go and feel comfortable and also not make other people feel uncomfortable? Because guess what? I don't want to make other people feel uncomfortable, because that doesn't make me feel comfortable.
Right.
So I usually go to the temple on Saturdays.
Wow.
That's the way you negotiate it.
But going back to the food buffet, I'm not missing out.
So
The Potomac food buffet is so good.
yeah.
And it's got, okay.
wait, so what was? Oh, it was the lady who was like didn't know
didn't
whether
know
to call you Prabhu
No,
or
I'm
not.
giving a shout out to the food
Oh
buffet.
yeah. That's true,
Yeah,
the
yeah,
food-
yeah.
Of course,
You
yeah.
all got to go to the
Which is
food
open on
buffet.
Saturdays.
I mean, it's open every day. I think.
It's open every day. Wow, this is really starting to feel like paid programming for the. Can I go back to the Sunday feast thing though?
Sure.
And can I? And maybe I'm playing devil's advocate here because I'm not even sure what I. But how would you respond to someone saying, "Well, that's all fine and well, but shouldn't we just like the practical thing is, this is an event that is catering to sort of the majority of attendees, and the majority of attendees do fit into this sort of Prabhuji, Mataji, male, female binary. You don't. Yeah. That's cool. We can, you're still welcome, but like, again, playing devil's advocate.
Of course.
But why should we sort of change the way we do things to accommodate the one person?
Well, that's what I was saying about acceptance. So for me, I'm not going to put myself in that position. And that's a personal choice because, I grew up in the 70s and 80s, and I have so much internalized like fear about being trans that I'm not looking for conflict.
So you're like, don't make waves.
I do not want to make waves.
Which is itself like a form of,
I'll talk to you all because you all are nice people, and but anyways, to get to your point and going back to acceptance, if we're talking just about women are here, men are here, so just imagine that there was full acceptance of all the people there. I could just go sit with the women and everything would be fine. But I understand that that's not probably not the case.
Right. So
I'll come on Saturdays. That's just my choice. And, if another person wanted to make another choice, I respect that. My question is, what does acceptance, does ISKCON or other Gaudiya Sanghas, do they want to accept trans people or not? I know the answer for some significant people in ISKCON because I have talked to them about it, but including at my temple. But what, there's no. I haven't seen an ISKCON temple with the little like rainbow flag that says "You're welcome here," on the churches and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It sounds a little funny, but a couple of years ago, I was part of some conversations when I was a little bit more active with management of particular, or on the board of particular temples, where we did talk about that. Yeah, because it was a reality.
Right, and if you're going to,
what does that mean to put that sticker there?
Right, you better have a pretty good idea of what that acceptance is going to look like.
Right.
I mean, if you don't put it there, then do what you're going to do. But,
right.
But what does the acceptance look like? And to me, I find it so incredibly interesting because, you have this Vedic tradition that has this built-in thing that says, these are the ways that you can live a peaceful life within your materials, within your varna, within your ashram, and live a peaceful life and make spiritual advancement. But there's no blueprint for gay and trans people, non-binary people, and so on like that. Yeah. And I find that incredibly interesting, and especially considering that in India, those people exist, and they even exist. I mean, I don't. People have made. I don't know. They even exist, say maybe some people say even in Mahabharata and Ramayana.
Oh, yeah, like Shikandi, right?
There's research, I think, that talks about sort of pre-Islamic Hindu, what we today call Hindu, or we might call Vedic, Sanatan Dharma, whatever, that has language. It's not always, it doesn't always align, right? Sometimes it's a catch-all phrase like Tritriya Prakriti, which literally translates
third
to like
gender.
third nature, third gender.
Or eunuch, they always translate eunuch.
Or eunuch, which it's kind of like a very...
A little weird, but yeah.
And I think some of that is like, that's a very kind of British, Victorian...
Antiquated,
Was that actually a eunuch? I mean, I think there's scholars that go, well, that's not really the eunuch the way we understand. But the fact that they're even in texts like the Mahabharata, or I don't know if you know about this, and I wish I remember the name of it, but there's a vernacular, it's not Valmiki Ramayan, but there's a vernacular retelling of the Ramayana, which includes this episode. It's a really, I think, endearing episode.
Yeah.
Do you know the story that I'm referring to?
Yeah. So what was it like? Ramachandra was like, what was it like? Women go over here, men go over here.
I mean, this is the way I heard it was
Yeah.
that, I don't know if it's the same one we're thinking of, but he says something to the effect of all like he's speaking to the citizens of Ayodhya.
Yes.
And he's
Yeah,
telling
that's
them
the same
to
one.
return to the kingdom.
Yes.
When
Yeah,
they
yeah.
want to just be in the forest with him in exile because
Yeah,
they love him
that's the
so
one.
much. Right, the same story.
Yeah.
And he says something like, all of the men and women of Ayodhya.
Yeah, that's what it was. Yeah.
My instruction for you is to go back.
Right.
And then he goes and he does the, Banvas, the exile, and then
Yeah.
they're returning, and they find,
Oh, I heard this.
They find this whole community
Yeah.
of people that are like that never left that place in the forest. And again, this is my sort of paraphrasing or retelling of it, where then Ramachandra says, "But what are you doing here? I as your king, I instructed you, I commanded you to return to Ayodhya." And they say, "Well, you said all the men and women of Ayodhya, but we are neither men nor women. So how could we follow that instruction?" So we stayed here. And again, the story as I heard it, and I get a little kind of my hair stands on
Yeah,
end because it's
super
so
sweet.
beautiful.
It's
It's,
very
so sweet.
sweet. Yeah.
He embraces them, right? And he says, like, you come back to Ayodhya with me, and he brings them back. Like he returns on that, So I have so many things in that story, right? But the fact that first of all, he doesn't say, "Wait, what? You're not men or women? Like, what's that? I never heard of." Like, there's a full understanding that like that's a thing.
Yeah.
And then he actually is sort of like charmed by and accepts their explanation. And the sort of happy ending of the story is he's like, "Okay, you come back with me," right?
So the other bit of that story, that is the same story that I was thinking. The other bit that I had heard about that was that Ramachandra also says, now you're able to bless. You're able to bless people. So I think even now there's a tradition of trans people in India blessing like weddings,
Yeah.
blessing
Right.
babies.
Oh, so that's
things like
an
that.
origin
Oh, it
story
comes
of
from
that.
there. Oh,
Wow, that's interesting. I
But
didn't
then,
know that aspect.
yeah, but then there's all, right. Well, we'll keep it at that. I think there's, so
It's
then,
a complicated
yeah,
kind of
so there,
thing now, but
and I think, well, anyways, I don't want to be all I think, but anyways, but yeah, and then in India, there's the whole Hijra community,
Right.
which is a trans community, and they're sometimes asked to come and
very
give
much.
blessings,
Very much.
Right.
and then they're
And
also feared because they can give curses.
thing because again again, not to geek out on it, but like there's an understanding, I think, as you might have encountered in not just Vedic culture, but maybe in many sort of old world cultures
absolutely.
where people in
Yes.
liminal spaces are powerful and can give blessings but can also give curses.
Yes.
Right, that's sort of
Yeah,
like
yeah.
right. Do you know about the conversation that Prabhupada had with I think with Hayagriva about the play? You know this?
Oh,
Where he's
this I
like,
don't know.
he's unless I'm totally butchering this story, because like we were talking about earlier, as I get older, my memory is so humbling. But the way I remember it, it's like Prabhupada is dictating, and I think Hayagriva, maybe others were there, but he's dictating the play that a play, a drama that he
Yeah.
wants the devotees to write
Yeah.
that depicts the age of Kali, like Kali personified. They actually ended up making this play, very powerful play, the age of Kali. But that also then shows the advent of Lord Chaitanya. And
right.
in that context, Prabhupada is narrating how the birth of Lord Chaitanya should be celebrated. And he talks about how these, the Hijra community
Yeah.
and he's trying to explain in this like Victorian English or whatever.
Yeah.
I think he might have used the word eunuch, or he might have
Right,
said
right,
like
right.
something
Right.
like, no, they're not men or women. They're like,
Yeah.
And he's like explaining and teaching the disciples like how they come and they're invited to give blessings.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And it's one of these
Yeah.
things where he's not trying to make a political statement, but he's like describing, he's giving a cultural snapshot that
Yeah.
clearly was like,
Yeah.
the norm in not just Prabhupada's time, but Prabhupada is saying in Mahaprabhu's time. And he's saying this is like an essential
this-
thing to
yeah,
depict
yeah.
in this drama. And Hayagriva and the other devotees are taking notes. And I think there's a transcript of it or something.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Interesting.
So there's all sorts of little things like that do give you a glimpse of like, okay, this was like a thing, right?
So the thing that I find so interesting about all that is that all of it is in a sense outside of, and actually even, well, I guess full clarification. I think in India, the Hijra community is actually that's a thing in itself. So I think there's many transgender folk in India that are not part of the Hijra community.
Correct.
Right.
Just for clarification for everyone. But anyways, again, like, what does acceptance look like? And I geek out on this all the time, but like, what does that look like? Because I personally am just so interested in how traditions evolve.
Yeah.
And like, why are we even following a tradition? If the point of a tradition is to help us make spiritual advancement, then what are the right ways to make adjustments for time and place that are actually going to do that?
Sure.
And it's interesting to me there are all these traditions and so like the Hijra community they're outside, but they're outside, but also they're not inside, but they're outside, but it's like, okay, they're over there, and we can take blessings from them, but they're outside, but they're still recognized, if that makes any sense.
Right.
Yeah.
Or even like, so I find it interesting, or even the Gaudiya tradition. It's,
There's a lot of like gender fluid stuff, no?
Well,
At
no, I
least-
wasn't thinking of that.
Oh, okay.
If there is, I don't know about it. But I was just thinking more of even Prabhupada coming and being like, well, we're going to take these aspects of Vedic culture. And in a way, it's kind of like, I grew up in Boston and, there's no, what business do I have to be trying to like live in any kind of Vedic way?
Right. Well,
In
also
a way, it's kind of
not
absurd.
Not to open a can of worms also, but
Yeah.
like, it's a very selected form.
No,
of,
that-
like
that-
we in ISKCON, I feel like we often use like this idea of like
Exactly.
we just put this term like Vedic, and it's like, well,
Right.
But it's like as you said, it's like Prabhupada.
Yeah.
What to speak of the institution after Prabhupada, but like chose certain things, right? Like there were good reasons maybe for choosing, but there was like certain aspects of Gaudiya culture, of Indian culture, of Hindu culture, of Vaidika culture, of Tantric culture, of like, you can keep going in terms of all these categories, right?
Yeah.
That just gets sort of flattened into like, that's Vedic, Prabhu. It's like, well, like let's unpack that. Like,
Right.
why are we taking this thing but not this thing? Or, whatever.
It's like it's like the importance of varnashram as well. Not importance, but like the pushing of varnashram as well. Like,
but even that I feel like is like is it like is there one monolithic traditional thing called varnashram that everyone is in agreement on? And I think even the more like very traditionalists within ISKCON, I think are still, it's a certain version of varnashram, right?
Yeah,
It's a
absolutely,
certain
yeah.
kind of like curated thing that they're saying, well, this is the tradition. This is, I mean, if we really want to get back to tradition, then like, what about all these other things?
Well, yeah. So when I made the decision that I'm like, that's it. Now I really just have to affirm who I am. I had to also at that point sort of recognize that like, I recognize that I'm sort of off script here as far as the following any sense of Vedic thing. And so I had to like really process that and be like, okay, well, is that okay? And, my personal realization was like, well, it's not, I'm in no position. I'm not an ISKCON leader or a sannyasi or any kind of person that's ever going to say like this should be adjusted or that could be adjusted.
Yeah.
But I can chant Hare Krishna and I can go to the temple and I can go to Vrindavan and I do my puja in the morning, all the things that nourish me spiritually. But going to the Sunday feast might be difficult because the women are over here and the men are over here. And maybe that has some Vedic roots to it or something. But I'm outside of that, and so you just have to focus on what's important.
Can we go back to that for a second? Because like, well, first of all, have you had the experience of like where, like you said, you might, all other things being equal, you might navigate that by going and like, sitting on the women's side or being on the women's side, right? Like you feel comfortable doing that. Have you had the experience of someone, coming up to you and going like, "Oh no, Prabhu,
Calling me out?
you have to go over here"?
No, because I don't.
That's good.
Only because I don't put myself in that position.
Oh no, right. But if you have, so you're not. So it's like almost like so. So is it like you're preemptively going like not putting yourself in that position?
Yeah, I'm not teeing that up.
Because I also wonder about that. Like I don't know how often that happens, but like that itself is like I wonder like if that were to happen and then you were to go, no, I'm good here. If the devotee would just be like, okay. Or if they would go, no, Prabhu, you're breaking the rules.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Like,
I think, I preemptively do not put myself in those situations, largely for my own safety and comfort.
yeah.
But I don't, people are coming to go to the temple. They want to see the deities. They want to have kirtan. And
Do you feel you're missing out on something?
no, not sometimes, but not so much. I'm pretty happy going to the temple on a Saturday, and maybe a big kirtan I miss. But
That bothers me that people, not just you, but others would like, if they're gay or if they're transgender, that ISKCON doesn't know how to like sometimes deal with it, and that it could make
Bothers
someone
me
feel
too.
what's that?
me too.
Yeah, that could make someone feel uncomfortable when it's like.
Yeah.
I guess it also depends on which temple you go to.
It
like
does.
It's
Yeah,
like
for
it's
sure.
like according to what.
Yeah,
the
like the
leader-
Bhakti Center, I probably would be fine.
right.
Maybe, I don't know. I haven't been there in a long time.
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
So
I haven't been there in a little while either, but I remember seating being just a little bit like, I mean, for practical purposes, sometimes it's like you sit where you get a chair. I mean, it's New York City. It's a small temple room. Like, so there's that practical component too, right? Where like maybe, whereas with other temples, maybe it's like where you sit is very much, or where you stand is very much like a point of contention. So yeah, there's an aspect to which I think it is going to like differ sort of temple to temple.
And I remember like in the early 2000s or something when devotees who were gay were trying to get initiated. Like I remember ISKCON gurus sometimes like didn't know what to do, and then they would go on to like an outside.
They would go outside because they
for
don't
sure.
have.
And that person who was outside of ISKCON,
my
the
God,
guru, they were like extremely accommodating and like, oh yeah, of course, like this is like no bearing and stuff.
Well, I mean, thank you for bringing this up, Nam, because I think part of that was like, at least in some cases, it was like the guru themselves within ISKCON, were it not for this kind of question of like, well, I don't know, like what the institution will say, they would not have had a problem giving Diksha to the prospective disciple.
Right.
But because they're like, oh, but I'm functioning within this institution and like, what do
They
I
don't
do?
wanna rock
with
the
this?
boat.
And now like my aspiring disciple has like told me this about themselves, and like, how do I negotiate this? And in the meantime, and I'm thinking of a couple of cases in particular, where in the meantime, that aspiring disciple was just like, well, I'm just going to go somewhere else where there's not these issues. And the guru outside of the institution said, well, I don't have to worry about that. We're thinking of the same situation.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, that's again, going back to this really, I think, deceptively simple, but actually very complex question of like, what is acceptance? What is actual acceptance? Right.
Yeah. Actually, I should really point out that the Potomac Temple is really awesome. So it's not like, that's no like shade on the
and I've also heard they have a buffet that's really good. We haven't talked about it yet. This is turning into like a Potomac buffet. Okay, but you're not. So you're saying your choice.
Yeah, Ananda Vrindavan, the TP there she's awesome. Awesome.
So again, your choice to go on Saturdays is just that. It's a choice to say this is where this is my way. I mean,
I'm also kind of a quiet person, and I'm like
sure. Yeah. I don't know, this is probably as good of a place as any, but one of the things I wanted to ask about, and I thought, no, maybe you were going to pull it up if you could find it, but we were talking about this earlier, there's this letter
I tried to look for it and I couldn't find it.
You can find it.
Oh,
Okay.
From Hawaii.
For the letter from
Yes.
Hawaii. Yeah.
Yeah,
Do you want to
yeah,
talk
yeah.
about that a little bit? Because I think it's
Right.
just,
Yeah, no, it's an
fascinating.
interesting
It's
one that comes
complex.
up.
It's
letter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So right. So
And please give it the context for those who
right.
don't
So
know.
the context is there. Prabhupada was in. I don't know if he was in Hawaii. Yeah, I guess he was in Hawaii. But in any case, there's a letter from Prabhupada to somebody in Hawaii. A trans woman asking if she could come to the temple. And Prabhupada said, yes, you can come, but just choose one gender and stick with that, because otherwise it's going to be confusing for people. Or, if you're changing it up, it's going to be confusing. So,
and that's basically the gist of the letter.
that's
right?
the gist of the letter. So,
and then he signs off like in a kind of a well-wishing way.
Yeah, it's a pretty short letter, I think. So his basic take was, you can come, just just don't change. If you're a woman, then come as a woman, and that's fine. So I've thought about that letter quite a bit. On the one hand, I think it's great. It's more than great. Sort of an initial Prabhupada being kind and accepting and welcoming like that to this person. On the other hand, I also sort of wonder if the letter might have read different if it had been to, say, an initiated devotee, and maybe it wouldn't have. I don't know. I think that there's actually another. How comfortable are you all with I think stuff? As far as but we're pretty loose. Okay.
Yeah,
we're not going to be like, what's your praman for that?
Yeah. So I'm happy to be stand corrected. I do believe that Prabhupada also referenced, I never seen it, but he referenced, going back to the Ramachandra thing, that there was, maybe this is what you were talking about, Prabhupada referencing that it was tradition in Bengal that trans women would come and bless weddings.
I think that's the reference
maybe
to
it's the thing
in the context of Mahaprabhu's birth.
yeah.
But I think he did say in Bengal, right?
Yeah. So there is that too. So there are all those indications, and I don't. Who knows?
Yeah.
I don't. What I don't know of is any initiated devotee.
Yeah.
I don't know. What do you think? Do you think a letter from Prabhupada to a Sunday feast visitor might be different than it would be to a?
Yeah,
probably.
I think so.
Yeah,
I think so.
But I mean, yeah. So I do as well.
Yeah.
And it's kind of hard to like I'm not
But
anti-speculation. I'm not.
Yeah. But we don't know how it would be.
But it's so hard to speculate for something like that. But what I do find really fascinating, as short as that letter is just like, I feel like there's just like a lot of really interesting things going on in the letter, but also between the lines, right? So again, what seems to me conspicuous by its absence is this sort of like Prabhupada saying, right? Well, what is this? This doesn't make sense. Like, there's almost like an implicit sort of understanding, like this is a thing.
There was context.
You're a real person,
right?
Like there's context, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's interesting.
Yeah.
I think and this is the way I read it. Maybe I'm reading it differently than others read it, but the way I'm reading it is like the fact that Prabhupada says, okay, choose one. He doesn't say choose the one you were born with.
No, he doesn't.
So he doesn't rehearse
clearly.
this sort of like very, anyway, we won't get into it, but I think there's a sort of, from a kind of a Western, maybe even like kind of Christian context, like there's this idea of like, well, God made you this way. And I don't see that in like, so that's also missing. Prabhupada doesn't say, well, Krishna made you, male, so just be male and be satisfied. He said, so the idea that he says, okay, choose one in this sort of value neutral way, I think is interesting.
I mean, I've thought about that a great deal as well. And I think it took me decades to sort of come to, well, either Krishna made me transgender, or I had a set of karma that set me up this way. And I can fight it or I can accept it.
Yeah.
But this idea of God made you
Yeah.
this way or that way, to me, it's like, God made you male, God made you female, God made me transgender. And
Right. Well, we were kind of talking about that you were sharing, right?
Yeah. So I was talking to a friend about this podcast, and he made a really cool point that in all the different lives that we've had,
right. Yeah.
the body that we're in actually affects the chitta, the subtle body, and kind of etches a little bit into it. So it's not such a stretch to think that, like, after so many thousands of millions of bodies, that you might have a body where you feel like you're another body, but you're in a certain body. Like, it's not a stretch.
Like, that actually works in our paradigm
It
pretty
does. Yeah.
And I didn't,
logically.
and the way he explained it, and I was like, that's so true. Like, I believe that.
Yeah.
That's also why, I mean, forgive me for going back to this and getting on the soapbox, but like, that's why, like, I just personally get very like frustrated when I hear devotees almost like word for word just parroting what, like, Christian fundamentalists say about, and I'm like, like, I can see why you may personally, for whatever reason, politically, ideologically, like, vibe with that, but like, you're accepting a paradigm that's just not basic,
and
like
has,
the metaphysical basis of Krishna consciousness. Like,
that
that's
has
just
nothing
not
to do with bhakti.
Yeah.
At all.
Right.
Like, it has zero anything to do with bhakti.
Yeah.
If you're worried about what I do with my life, like, if I'm getting in the way of you got something to work on.
Right. Right.
Sorry, I mean, not to be like harsh, but it's
No, you
like,
don't need to apologize. That's,
and again, it goes back to Varnashram. At least in the 90s, there was like this thing of like imposing, like, Varnashram needs to be imposed
yeah.
for the sake of Varnashram or Christianity. My idea of Christianity needs to be imposed on you. What does that have to do with loving God? It has nothing. What it has to do is using a religious tradition to beat up on a group of people.
Yeah.
Essentially.
And then that gets into like power and
Yeah.
stuff like that. Can we go back to the letter though? Because I don't want to lose that
Well,
thread.
I had a thing about the subtle body though, because I real quick, so I told you that, like, I spent a lot of time in libraries pre-internet trying to figure out who I am, right?
Yeah.
So like, you're not the body. Yeah, that's helpful. And then later on, when I started learning more about Gaudiya philosophy, this idea that there's a subtle body, I was like, oh, yeah, maybe I have a female subtle body and somehow or other a male body. Maybe that's what happened. And it was really tempting to speculate that that's what's going on. And it's still tempting to think like that. And that might actually be true. But honestly, I can't know.
Yeah.
Just like I can't know my karma. Just like I can't know what Krishna wants for me. I can just do the best with what I have.
And I think that...
And so it's like, that kind of stuff is helpful. It's super helpful, actually, in a way. But it's... the best I can do is just work with what I have,
And I think that, I mean, like, right, the point is not for us to figure our karma out, right? We're never going to be able to. The point is not to sit there and disentangle it, strand by strand. And
it's impossible to do.
It's impossible. Yeah. So I think, trans or not, like, that's, I think, true for all of us.
Yeah.
Going back to the
letter.
Back to the letter, just because I find it interesting.
Super interesting.
The part that maybe is a little challenging, and with respect, and I think there's a way to engage with this stuff with respect. I know there may be some devotees who are like, well, Prabhupada said it, end of story, like, how dare you question it, kind of thing. Yeah. Putting aside that, but I think with respect, right, the part that some of us may find more challenging is, and I'm really curious to hear your thought as a trans person, when Prabhupada says, choose one, because going back and forth is confusing. There's something that's very pragmatic about that, right?
I don't know if he used the word confusing. I think he maybe used the word disturbing. I think is what he said.
And the implication of disturbing to the wider community.
I did say confusing, but I think he actually used, we should find it out. Eventually, no, not right now, but
Oh gosh, look it up.
Somebody
I can-
somebody's got it.
Yeah. Right, but either confusing or disturbing. But the implication I think you said was to the temple, not to the person themselves.
Exactly.
Not to, I think her name is Jennifer. Not to Jennifer.
Oh,
but
well done.
Does he write
Nice
it to
pull.
Jennifer?
I think so.
I-
Yeah.
yeah.
I
If
think
you
that's right.
Google Prabhupada letter to Jennifer, Hawaii trans or
yeah.
something.
Yeah, Honolulu, June
Yeah.
10th.
Yes, we found it. Okay. Do you want to read the letter out?
Yeah, my dear Jennifer. So this is on Honolulu, June 10th, 1975. Jennifer Wayne Woodward in San Francisco. Please accept my greetings. I'm in due receipt of your letter dated June 6, 1975. And have noted the contents. First of all, you decide whether you are female or male. Then be one or the other. Then you may enter our temple anytime you like. But sometimes man and sometimes woman, that is not proper. Such awkward thing cannot be allowed. It will be disturbing to others. Anyway, continue to chant Hare Krishna as much as possible. I hope this meets you in good health. Your ever well wisher.
Yeah.
Okay.
I love that.
Well,
Yeah.
a lot of interesting stuff, right?
great
Word
letter.
awkward's in there, right? I read this as also a very pragmatic thing that, or like Prabhupada's being very pragmatic. Some might even say too pragmatic, but you
Yeah.
know, but
Yeah.
I would love to hear your thoughts, right? Because it's like, okay, but like practically speaking, the switching back and forth, that's like, this is not going to work. It's not going to be a good
Yeah.
scene.
Yeah.
Choose one. Don't disturb others. And he says others, right? Which is interesting.
Yeah.
Like, right.
Yeah,
so
yeah, yeah.
the concern, and then kind of like this, like anyway,
Yeah.
which is also an interesting use of right, like
Yeah.
where it's like Prabhupada being like,
Yeah.
okay, but this is not the be all end all.
Yeah.
Let's get back to basics. Chant Hare Krishna. Keep chanting Hare Krishna. Like don't give that up.
The takeaways that I have from it that I think, I mean, aside from the one I already mentioned, that I find so interesting is that I get the sense, and this could be wrong, that like this was not a new concept to Prabhupada. Like Prabhupada wasn't like, what is this?
Yes.
You know? And again, going back to this thing, like I think there was some context for him. So there's that. And then the thing that is interesting is the idea of just choose one and then, I think a really important distinction in that word is that, first of all, trans people don't choose to be trans. They are trans. This is not a choice. It's you either are or you're not. So I think, and I wouldn't fault Prabhupada in sort of not knowing that, especially in 1975. But yeah, so it's not like you choose. Now you can choose how you present. And so I don't know what the context was there. Like, I don't know if Jennifer was sometimes coming in, presenting as a male and sometimes presenting as Jennifer. So I don't know the context is there, but the thing that's curious about that to me is why Prabhupada even thought of that.
I always assumed there was
am
some
I-
kind of context.
Yeah, I don't know what
Either
I don't
Jennifer
know.
had been doing that or Jennifer
Yeah.
suggested, because this is a response to another letter. We don't have that.
Yeah.
Jennifer's letter.
He was in Honolulu, but the letter was to San Francisco.
I know
Oh,
that
okay.
too. I didn't.
Jennifer's from San Francisco.
Jennifer's,
Yeah,
and-
I always thought it was.
and Prabhupada's responding to Jennifer's letter. So it's maybe it's possible Jennifer gives the idea like, hey, can I go back and forth, and can I be
Yeah.
male when I go to the temple and female?
Yeah.
And maybe Prabhupada's we don't know. We
don't
don't
know.
know. But Prabhupada's clearly somehow got that idea.
Yeah, it's
And is
interesting.
choosing to address it, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it is interesting.
Pretty fascinating stuff.
Yeah, totally.
Can I give another Prabhupada-based example, and then we can also move on to other
Absolutely.
things?
Yeah.
And this is maybe a bit obscure. Nam, I'm also curious. We haven't talked about this, but I'm curious if you remember this from your childhood of like watching the Prabhupada Memories videos. But I have this distinct memory of watching the memory
know what you're
of the
gonna say.
Prabhupada Memories video, the Sudama.
Sudama, yeah.
So this is a thing.
I
I
don't
feel like
know.
there's a certain like
Okay.
a certain age group.
Do you remember this?
I remember the series.
Did you remember? So
I don't remember.
As a
don't
kid,
know
I
what
was
you're
like,
talking about.
what is going on?
we grew up watching like the Prabhupada Memories videos. Like,
Yeah.
and I still to this day, like it's just like, wow, you put one of those videos on, I'm transfixed. I'm like, I'm locked in.
Yeah.
But so great, right? Anyway, I don't remember which volume it's on, right? But But in one of the volumes, one of the devotees who's interviewed, and I'm so grateful they interviewed this devotee before they passed away, but it's the devotee Prabhupada named Sudama, and gave sannyas to, and I think was known
Black
as
body devotee.
Yeah. I actually ended up
did
knowing
not know
quite a
this.
bit about this devotee because one of my mentors, who's since passed on, is Lohitaksha Prabhu. Lohitaksha Prabhu served under Sudama Maharaj, who Prabhupada really loved and empowered and put in charge of this vibrant drama troupe in the glory days of ISKCON New York called the Vaikuntha Players.
Right.
Sudama Maharaj joined much earlier, and Prabhupada, had him do all sorts of amazing service, and he preached in like Tokyo, all these places, all these things. You can actually pull it up, right? So anyway, Sudama Maharaj, I learned about because he was in charge of the Vaikuntha Players.
Oops.
And my mentor, one of my mentors, Lohitaksha Prabhu, was part of that troupe. Sudama Maharaj is on that Prabhupada Memories video, and then on the video, it's never talked about, but kind of presents the best I could put it is presents in a very sort of feminized way. I mean, it's interesting. Nam, you pulled it up.
I remember that.
I remember it. It's funny how our memories work because I remember it as being much more clearly like women's attire. Like I seem to remember.
Well, this is one of them.
There's another
He's wearing
one.
a bindi and
I remember a
earrings
sari
and
or
stuff.
something, but maybe I'm mixing it up. But there's something that's very like markedly feminine dress, and very uncommon to see. Like for instance, like a bindi, like right?
For sure.
And very like feminine earrings and things like that. And it's never talked about in the video. I mean, it's not the point of the video, right? The point is Prabhupada memories, and Sudama gives these beautiful Prabhupada memories, but it's also very feminine presenting, very effeminate in terms of the manner of speech and stuff like that. And again, like Nam, I think I remember just being like, what's going on here?
Yeah.
And maybe even asking someone, and they were just like they didn't really have like a very knowledgeable answer. It was just like kind of, but also no one sort of being like, first of all, I made it into Prabhupada Memories video. It wasn't like censored out.
Right.
No one being super like disturbed and negative about it and being like, oh, like, this person's in my...
He's a good...
Oh, yeah?
Close to
I would
me.
love to hear that because I never, I actually never heard anything more about it. But I just remember being, and I've talked to others where we were just like, isn't that interesting? And I think Sudama, passed away soon after recording that.
Yeah, I vaguely remember seeing that. Until you showed me the picture, I was like, oh, I vaguely remember that. Yeah.
So there's something there where,
Something that also comes to mind about like the choose one thing that Prabhupada said.
Yeah.
That there's a letter to Upendra where he's talking about Upendra being gay, and he's saying that just be with one person, like basically monogamous, and then and just practice your Krishna consciousness.
I think he specifically says like a male in that.
Boy. He says
a boy.
Just live with one boy and
yeah.
but
So it's
I
like,
think that has not been. I haven't seen that. That sounds.
let me
great.
try to pull that up.
I don't know if it's a
has
letter
not
or
been
if it's
what's-
like,
Oh, you know what?
It may be in a
it was in a
conversation
memories.
or
It was in a
memories.
memories. It wasn't a letter.
Yeah.
It could be a letter. Let's see.
Yeah.
Interestingly, both also, just to further complicate things, maybe, both Upendra and Sudama were at times married to women in the movement, and Prabhupada, either blessed them to be married or in, I think maybe in Upendra's case, maybe in both cases, actually, like, brought the two people together, like, right? Like, and I think, again, that was like, that probably would have been pretty common in
think
those days.
When I lived in the temple, it was.
Yeah.
I knew a gay devotee and
Yeah.
the higher up said, "Get married to a woman," and then.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know what the thinking was.
I think, I agree. The same thing. I think it was probably going on in the wider. I mean, I think that was like
listen to this.
wider society. It was like you
Listen to
married
this.
women.
That's right. Yeah.
Right.
Adi Karta Prabhu, this is from the Galva website. Adikarta Prabhu remembers, in his early brahmachari days, Upendra Das had the honor of being Srila Prabhupada's personal servant for a couple of years, and I had the honor of being his close friend from 1975 until his death. Upendraji was always one to speak from the heart. He related to me once something that he said Srila Prabhupada told him in a private conversation. Upendra was bemoaning his fate as a homosexual in the Hare Krishna movement, and according to him, Srila Prabhupada, perhaps tired of his endless moaning, advised him to just find a nice boy then and settle down. This was a private conversation, not recorded, and what actually transpired was that Upendraji got married to a woman instead, sometime later. But he did tell me this anecdote. I can vouch for that. And Upendra was, in my experience, an honest and honorable man. Srila Prabhupada was an absolutely sacred memory for him and most meaningful thing in his entire life. And it's hard for me to imagine he would ever make up something and pass it off as Prabhupada said. Letter to Amara Das, June 28th, 2001.
There's also, I think maybe it's not even on the same website, but there's another story, I think also in Hawaii maybe, where slightly different, context, but where Prabhupada is being served by a devotee named Shyamsundar, not the famous Shyamsundar of the meeting the Beatles, but another devotee named Shyamsundar who also was gay. Or
that's right here.
Oh, it's the next story?
Next one, yeah.
Yeah.
You want to read it?
Sure. So this is from Shyamsundar. One morning in Hawaii, I was standing by Srila Prabhupada's window overlooking his private garden when a senior disciple named Siddha Swarupa Swami, famous Siddha Swarupananda, came in. He began complaining about all of the quote-unquote pretty boys and homosexuals in ISKCON, and Srila Prabhupada just let him vent, not saying much of anything. As a side note, this is not Shyamsundar now, this is me, but as a side note, apparently Siddha Swarupa, for whatever reason, was very critical of, and maybe continued to be.
He's the one that went on to
Created his own thing.
Correct.
his own thing.
Also known as Chris Butler, Jagat Guru,
Tulsi Gabbard.
Gabbard's.
Oh yeah.
And
he's got a big anti-LGBT.
A lot of
thing.
anti-LGBT stuff surfaced, especially
that
as
one.
people started learning more about Tulsi. And so apparently it just tracks that, that's been a part of his
he's the
shtick.
guy.
Okay, anyway. After some time, Siddha Swarupa left, not getting the reaction he had wanted.
Right.
Prabhupada sat at his desk for a while. This is Shyamsundar, I was feeling really angry towards Siddha Swarupa, but also self-conscious about my own sexuality. Prabhupada sat there quietly and in deep thought. He then looked over at me briefly and said, "What is the difference if a person is held in the material world by a gold chain or by a silver chain?"
Right.
I replied, "I don't know, Srila Prabhupada." He continued, "I am glad that Siddha Swarupa is chanting and reading my books, but he is always focusing on everyone else and not on the Supreme Person. That is the important thing."
Yeah.
Wow.
Right.
So that, again, this sort of like Prabhupada kind of being like,
Yeah.
I read this as like, kind of like why do we have to make such a big deal about condemning this and putting this down? Like the real thing, that's not the essential thing that I'm trying to do.
That's not what we're trying to do.
That's not what we're trying to do.
Yeah.
If I could put you on the spot for a second.
Of course.
What do you do now as far as like a relationship, like a close relationship with I don't know, like Sangha or even just do you have people who are other trans people that you are, that you communicate with or hang out with, or other devotees?
Like
or
devotees or just people in general?
Both.
Yeah. I mean, I have like the devotee friends that I made in the early 90s or throughout the 90s, really. And I mean, really the devotee friends that I made are, they're so important to me and I'm in touch with them regularly. I don't know any other trans devotees. I do know one trans woman in DC who I actually knew her in the 90s too. And neither of us were sort of, we knew each other were trans, but neither of us were really out, But anyway, she likes to go to the temple and So I'm in touch with her, but she ended up actually, she ended up converting to Islam. So,
Oh wow,
Oh
Yeah.
wow.
that's
Yeah.
really interesting, and
As a trans person.
yeah.
I'm so curious about that.
Yeah. Well,
Another podcast for another day. Or another
Yeah.
like
Wait, so
I'm
how
not
come Krishna
qualified.
consciousness didn't work out?
I don't really know, actually. I'm actually not in that. I only am mentioning her as sort of the only trans person that I know
Okay.
that was interested in Krishna consciousness.
There's one devotee in California.
Oh,
I actually interviewed her.
Oh,
But
what's her name?
Well,
Or maybe you don't want to say.
Yeah.
yeah.
So after I interviewed her, she said that she didn't want the interview to be released.
I get it. Yeah.
So no one, but it was a great conversation. Like stuff
Yeah.
like she was a brahmachari in the temple, and she would see the brahmacharinis wearing saris and things, and would be like attracted to that.
Yeah.
And I found that so fascinating.
Right.
yeah.
Like
Right.
that, like going into that person's head and kind of like seeing like what led to them like
Very like
becoming
like lived experience kind of stuff. right?
exactly yeah.
Well, I
That
mean,
was the same experience I had.
yeah. In
did
that vein,
also?
Absolutely.
I wanted to ask. Yeah, could you
Absolutely.
share
I mean,
some of that?
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think because you had asked like, how is it living in a temple and it's so gendered? Like that was hard, It would have been easier probably if it was just a brahmachari temple. But but that was hard. But I mean, in retrospect, I don't know that anyways, it was hard, but I have no regrets about anything at all. So it's kind of like it all worked out in a way.
Yeah.
But I mean, I've often sort of wondered why the temples so often are so you have both genders right there. I always found that quite interesting. But anyways, I had that same experience. I even remember one time when I was living in the temple and it was a Sunday feast, and actually maybe to the earlier thing, there was a trans woman that would come regularly to the temple.
Really?
Yeah. And this is probably like 98 or something like that. And but she was not like, unfortunately, like some of the devotees were not very welcoming to her, even to the point of calling her disgusting to her face and stuff like that.
Oh, wow.
Which was sad. I mean, especially since I think this woman was also living on the street. So, but anyways, as far as Sangha goes, it's like, some of those devotees that I lived with in the temple or that were part of the temple at that time, they're just still my closest friends, men and women. So, yeah.
Can you share what we were talking about earlier? Can you share the story of your name? I realized we never got to talk about that on the pod.
Oh my God, it's so
good.
embarrassing. It's kind of, it's super
I mean,
funny.
if you feel comfortable sharing it, but I
I
thought
can't.
it was a great.
I don't. It's good for me to like display my superficiality.
No, anyway, I'll let you tell it, but I don't think it was superficial at all, but
Yeah, I didn't think
It really kind of is.
I think it was cool.
I thought it was cool. Yeah.
Yeah. So I hope I don't get in trouble, but it's okay. So I was initiated in around Gaur Pranim, 1999, and in Baltimore, with friend of the pod, Madan Mohan, right? He was on your pod once, I think.
Madan Mohan?
Mm-hmm.
Who's Madan Mohan?
Mother
He's-
Mohan.
Madan the Six?
No, Mother Mohan, the poet.
No.
Different Mother. Who?
Oh, never mind. He's like, isn't he like temple president or something around here?
Mother Gopal.
Madan Gopal. Sorry.
Madan Gopal. Yeah, of course. Yeah. Friend of the pod, for sure.
Okay,
Friend of the pod, Madan Gopal.
Yes.
Sorry, I was confused by the Madan Mohan.
Wait, you got
Pictures
initiated
were-
the same time as him?
Same time.
Oh,
yeah.
that's cool.
Wow.
Yeah, same day.
Oh.
You know,
and-
he's not only local here, but he's also a
He's a guru.
Yes,
which is
I know.
a whole another fascinating thing. We are constantly like,
Yeah.
it's just so like wild for us,
Yeah.
having known him for so many
Yeah.
years. And anyway, that's it.
Yeah, right. So
But you all were initiated in the same.
yeah, the basement of in Baltimore, and so the night before we were getting initiated, I was staying at this devotee's house, friend of mine, and I was sitting in the basement, or no, actually, I guess it was the morning before the initiation. I was chanting, and I was like, oh my gosh. And I guess I don't know, when you all were initiated, did you run through the possibilities of names you might get?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
100%,
100%.
right?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's not just me.
And I
So
got
was
totally
like,
smashed right away.
so I was
'cause
like, is it going to be this name? Is it going to be this name?
Yeah,
Is it going to
yeah.
be this name? And then I was like, oh, what if I get a Lalita something name? Then I was like, wow, that would be far out. And again, that's not me being psychic. At the time, Satsubra Maharaj had been giving lectures on the section of the CC where about the book, the Lalita Madhava. There's a spoiler there. But anyways, so then when I got initiated, Satsubra Maharaj was like, and your name is Lalita Madhava. And my first thought was like, oh my God, I have a girl's name. And I was like, I don't know what the feeling, I don't know, when you all were initiated, what kind of feelings did you have in general? It's like overwhelming, right?
Absolutely.
It's like,
there's so much happening here.
there's
right?
so much happening. And, but honestly, the first thing I thought was, I have a girl's name,
No,
which is super superficial.
but in what sense? Like I have a girl's name as just an observation, as a thing I'm happy about, as a thing
Well, I was not unhappy about it.
yeah.
Yeah.
But I was definitely, I think honestly, it was like happy irony. Almost like Krishna playing a funny joke like that.
Wow.
Like, I think that's maybe the best way to say it. It's like, hopefully Krishna's like, this is a sincere devotee, you're getting initiated. And then with a little...
Is that like Krishna like winking at you a little bit?
Yeah.
Something.
Well, I'm not trying to say that I have Krishna's blessing or anything like that, but there was an irony there, or
Something I want to touch on is that Gaudiya Vaishnavism is, the what Lord Chaitanya came to give was Raganuga Bhakti. And Raganuga Bhakti is following in the footsteps of the Vrajvasis, in our lineage, specifically the Gopis. So in regards to like Manjari Bhav, Gopi Bhav, there's something that maybe transgender people, especially transgender women, could be closer to that identity than like just
Like a cis
man.
male. Yeah.
I don't know.
Have you ever thought of that?
Well, I think my take on that has always been to be just really careful about that line of thinking.
Right.
Just to, I don't think that I'm transgender for a spiritual reason. It's just my
Right.
karma or something like that.
Right.
And I'm sure, at least my understanding of karma anyways, is that we're here and we can make an advancement.
Yeah.
We're going through what we need to go through to make advancement.
Yes.
So my ideal is I've got to go through this. And so I don't try and stretch it beyond that. Just out of maybe an abundance of caution, I suppose.
Of course. Yeah.
And that's, I think Satsubra Maharaj really sort of taught that. There was,
Right.
as you all may have remembered, there was, in the 90s, there was this sort of like, what was it, like the
Gopi
the
Baba Club.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was like the resurgence.
Yeah.
That was like the second wave.
Right.
The first one was actually during Prabhupada's
Oh, is there
time.
another one? Oh, that was the first one.
That was the
Yeah,
original
okay, that
one.
was the right.
in I think LA or something. And
Right,
Prabhupada was
yeah.
actually there for that and
Right.
spoke out very strongly.
So Satsubra Maharaj he wanted to take a step away from that. He didn't want to, and I sort of,
Right. Because you're
followed
a
that
student, so therefore you have that certain instilled.
yeah,
in
I mean, it just made sense to me. You know, I mean,
Just like
yeah,
tread,
of course
tread
I wouldn't.
very carefully.
Tread carefully,
Yeah, I wouldn't go against what Satsvaraj, or at least intentionally go against what he says, but it also made sense to me.
Yeah.
Did you ever reveal that to any of your like authorities or
Yes,
your
that's
guru?
Satsvaraj. Yeah.
Really? Can you tell us about that a bit?
I mean, I suppose, yeah, I can. I mean, before I was initiated, I did. And again, I didn't really have the language at the time, but I did the best I could, you know.
I mean, not to be too like on the nose about it, but would you have said something like, I feel like a woman in a man's body? That's kind of like the sort of maybe cliched line or something.
I think, I don't know that I've ever actually really felt like that, quite honestly.
So it's actually not
I just
like that.
feel like me, you know? So I don't, I mean, so I don't know if you're aware of the term gender dysphoria. So I definitely experienced that. And so maybe
so you do identify with that term, that gender dysphoria. Yeah.
100%. Even, I mean, almost every day, even.
And just to clarify,
So
is
what
that
is that?
a synonym for, like, are you using that synonymously with being trans, or is that
No,
true
no,
of
no,
you,
no,
but
no,
not
no.
necessarily for other trans people?
Most trans folks feel gender dysphoria, and maybe so for listeners, what it means is dysphoria is like the opposite of euphoria. So it's feeling. So if euphoria is feeling comfortable and feeling good, dysphoria is feeling not good. So gender dysphoria is when you have when you're not feeling comfortable with your body because it's exhibiting gender characteristics that you're not identifying with. Like, so for example, like a beard or something like that. You all have nice beards, by the way.
Thank you.
We're kind of known for it now. we've had guests refuse to come on. We've had prospective guests refuse to come on unless we shave. But anyway,
But those sort of real things that are like,
Yeah.
you know, so
I just want to, sorry to interrupt, but I just want for clarification.
you got
right? Like,
lost there. Sorry,
we're all, I mean, like, especially
So you
during
feel
certain stages in our life, we're all sort of unhappy with our.
I remember that as a teenager.
I remember really feeling like just
you're
not-
getting used to the thing, but then eventually
But then you eventually grow.
Yes.
But you're talking about something different.
Yes.
Dysphoria in the sense of
this
gender
feels alien. This
and
feels not
always
good.
feels
on a
alien.
daily basis.
Well, it's not always. It's not always. It's, you know, because you can do things to mitigate that. You know,
But if you don't do those things to mitigate it,
then it feels pretty bad. Yeah.
okay. So this is not just right, like discomfort with one's body that maybe all of us feel at certain times in our life, especially during like puberty or right after
Right.
puberty.
No, it's
This is
different.
like something.
Right. And in the context of what I had said initially before getting initiated was I feel better when I express myself in a feminine way, which at the time I could only do in private. But so yeah, and then it had, you know, it came back a few times in subsequent years. So.
Can you share Satsur Maharaj's response as you recall it?
Yeah, he's always been accepting. Yeah, I hope. No, I just don't want to speak for
Sure.
people, you know.
Of course.
But I've maybe to put it the right way to put it is I've always felt accepted.
Right.
By
And
Satsur
that
Maharaj,
includes like sort of pre-initiation and then initiation. So it wasn't like, oh, okay, like you got to deal with this thing, otherwise
I
you're
was
not.
initiated in the 90s when I was living in the temple where I was really just trying to be like, you know,
Follow the program.
yeah.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, at the time, yeah. So it was,
Yeah.
you know.
Sorry, did you have?
I did want to ask a little bit change the subject, but you go ahead.
Also just want to appreciate and maybe the listeners. I don't remember if you said this sort of on the air once we're rolling, but I want to appreciate that you've kind of given us carte blanche to ask. Ask me
I
anything
really
in the
appreciate
literal
that.
sense.
Yeah.
Well,
Thank
it's
you.
super important to me because I mean, maybe it's a function of my age where I'm just like, I grew up in a time where there was no context and any kind of context was just negative,
Right.
So to me, it's kind of like,
Yeah.
what do I have to lose? And I'm, I've listened to you all on the podcast many times, so I feel comfortable with you all. So I'm like, yeah, I it's important to me like I said before about acceptance, if there's a mood of acceptance, you can talk about anything.
Yeah.
Absolutely,
You can work through anything, like literally anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is why like all the noise and it's not just noise, like there's actual legislative attacks on trans people at this moment, which is, partially why I wanted to have an opportunity to talk. But if you just boil it down to acceptance, you can talk about anything. You can talk about sports. You can talk about medical care for kids or how to work with trans kids. You can talk about bathrooms. You can talk about anything. If there's a context of, I accept who you are.
Yeah.
If there's a context of, I don't accept who you are, then what?
Like the rest of those conversations are not really.
No, they're not real. They're just a fight. And what's the fight for? Even,
So in that spirit of, like, right, sometimes there are no stupid questions. Like, so I'm going to really take shelter of that right now.
No worries.
And even the phrasing, I'm not sure if I'm using appropriate language, but where, if at all, did what we commonly call kind of cross-dressing feature into your story, your experience?
Yeah. So I think like with most trans people I can tell you the story of when I first realized I was transgender to that point. One of my earliest memories is of being in like a preschool. I don't think it was quite kindergarten, so I think I was probably around 4. Yeah, give or take 4. And I was in some sort of preschool, and there was a play area, and like they'll have like the kitchen area and the blocks and the coloring area and stuff. So there's a dress up area. And so there was a dress over there, and I remember I was like, oh, that dress is so pretty, I want to go wear it. So I start walking across the room to go try it on. And then before I get there, this big brutish boy goes over and throws on the dress and then starts parading around the classroom going like, making a big joke. Like, I'm a girl, blah, 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 like that. And I just like shrank back and was like, oh, this is clearly not okay. Because he was making a joke. Like, I wanted to really wear the pretty dress, but he wanted to make fun of girls or make fun of the idea of a boy making a dress like that, So that was like my very, very first, that's my first time where I remember wanting to express femininity. And also my first memory of it, the lesson being shown to me that that's not okay,
right.
Yeah. So, but anyways, so as far as cross-dressing goes, I think then eventually, when I was a teenager, then I was able to cross-dress in private, always, because I was just scared to death.
Never publicly, only in private.
No way. I was just so scared to death. I mean, it was like the 80s, and it was just terrifying, the idea, it's just, the environment was just terrifying and confusing. And I'd had enough messages that this is not okay, this is grotesque or perverted or whatever, that it was just, I had already built up many, many layers of fear and shame that live today. Honestly, I mean, you just can't like erase that stuff. So anyways, yeah.
And then in the context of ISKCON culture, was there, especially, and I mean, it's like kind of almost like superficial just even in the asking, but like, we've got some really like some really cool fashion.
Yeah, we
and,
do.
And a lot of it is, I mean, it's starting to change actually, because I think
what I'm saying.
I feel like when we were growing up, like the men were all kind of like a little schleppy, schlobby, and but like now, like guys are like really like coming into their own as far as like it's really nice like kurtas.
I-
and,
Like Ganga
remember-
Prasad going to where the women's blouses fabric is and making kurtas out of that. And
yeah, now it's like very like I mean I've gone to like Ganga Prasad. And I'll be
I
like,
do remember the
give me
moon,
the good
I
stuff,
do
you
remember
know?
the moon boot and dhoti years.
the what?
the which one?
The moon. Oh, Brahma Muhurta would get that joke. Shout out Brahma.
No, shout out to Brahma
Shout out,
Muhurta.
shout out,
What,
yes.
what did you say?
CMD.
The what?
Do you remember like I remember a time when the scruffy devotee look?
Yeah.
When it was like you'd have like some like disheveled dhoti and they'd be wearing moon boots. Do you all remember moon boots? Those big puffy boots.
Oh yeah. I think I blocked it. Like, but yeah. Right.
They
and
were
it was
like Crocs but worse. But
they were worse. They were
wait,
worse. Yeah.
Crocs are okay. Sorry, y'all.
No, but right. So
But
that's,
we have awesome fashion. We do. And
now I think
love going to
the
Loy
male
Bazaar.
presenting stuff is like really good looking too. But
Sure.
at the time, were you like drawn to? I mean, the beauty of like the
absolutely.
feminine dress.
Yeah, like you were saying to the woman that you interviewed before. Yeah,
It was like the saris, the
yeah.
gopi skirts.
yeah, and that
all
was in the '90s before it got really good.
Yeah. Yeah. But only in private. You'd only be able to.
Oh no, I would no. This was the privacy
this-
of my head because
So you wouldn't even-
What about now?
Yeah, I mean when I do my puja and stuff like that, I have a gopi skirts.
Wow.
That's my go-to for puja because it's just like whoosh,
Yeah,
and
it's
then,
yeah.
yeah.
Oh, interesting.
But I'm not likely to post again. Going back to the temple, I'm not likely to post up at the temple
Right.
because I don't know. Yeah, those layers of guilt and shame and fear, and also I don't want to disturb anyone.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I guess the way that transgenderism was portrayed in the media as like, okay, like you have to use the pronouns, we're going to force you to do that, or the bathroom thing, or the involving the children thing, or the surgeries, and there's like so many things in regards to that how it was portrayed. What's your take on all that? I know you like to be more like, I don't want to disturb anyone kind of thing, and
Well, I don't want to disturb devotees
right.
at the temple. I mean, I don't, and I mean, I generally don't like to disturb people, anyways. But at the temple, for sure, I don't want to disturb people. But yeah.
But I guess so. You're asking like, what's your take on sort of like the activist angle to things?
Yeah, because I know there's transgender people even on the conservative side who disagree with the way that it's like the activism is done.
Or like the accusation of like sort of like, I don't know if this is the correct phrase, but like sort of like trans agenda.
Right, trans agenda.
Like,
yeah.
do you think that there is a trans agenda that is sort of gone too far or something like that?
No, I don't. I think. So again, I want to keep bringing it back to this word acceptance because I really think that everything else is noise, almost noise. Like if you start with in a place of acceptance, all that stuff can be figured out in one way or another. And as far as like trans agenda, most trans people, they just want to live quietly,
Yeah.
They just want to live quietly. And honestly, in some ways, we're able to live quietly a lot easier before there was more awareness about trans issues. And yeah, it's so easy to get into the weeds with all the different like things. And it's not that I definitely have thoughts on all those different things, but again, it's like unless there's a mood of acceptance, it's really almost impossible. And I think that if anything's been taken, too far, I mean, the thing that's been taken like way, way too far is that, not to get overtly political, but politicians, primarily, or if not exclusively on the right, are getting political mileage out of beating up on trans people. And I think a lot of them just actually don't really care.
Right.
But they know that if
They know it's going to get.
if they say this or that, then they'll get some votes. And that's not all of them. Some of them genuinely do believe what they're saying because they're genuinely pushing legislation that is real world legislation that really affects trans people.
Regarding the sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I mean, I think one could say as well on the left, you know, there are folks who genuinely care, and there are also folks who probably also get mileage out of virtue
absolutely.
signaling and whatnot, right?
Absolutely.
And it's just like, because it's such a polarizing and polarized issue now.
Yeah. And I almost want some of them, like, and you know, like I said, I think I'm not the only trans person that. Maybe it's ironic that I was like, "Hey, I'll be on your podcast, but I want to live quietly."
I think both of those things could coexist. You could be a guest on a podcast and still want to live quietly.
But anyways, I think even for the left, like I don't want to be a poster person for somebody on the left either. I just want to be able to go to the bathroom. You know, like I actually really need to go to not right now, but you know,
I know
when I'm driving, I need to find a place where I can go to the bathroom safely.
Right. And that's not like a political statement. That's like an actual pragmatic biological need. I'm, you know, just the thing about acceptance being, you know, sort of the foundation of anything.
Yeah.
You know, in this regard, I'm also wondering if you feel like that cuts both ways in terms of, right, like look, there are people who are out to be cruel and to be you know, where maybe a term like transphobic is actually what is just a statement of fact. And I think there are probably a good number of other folks who are like terrified of being labeled a transphobe. But who may also want to like ask questions or engage or may disagree,
absolutely,
you know, with certain things and agree with other, you know what I mean? Like there's nuance there. And I feel like, and again, I say this as someone who's generally more comfortable on the left than on the right. But I've also noticed this sort of like swiftness with which we just label each other, including labels like transphobe. So, you know, maybe there's someone watching or listening now who like something that, you know, one of us said is like, they're like, oh, well, Venkat is a transphobe, so we don't need to listen to anything else.
Totally.
Right.
So just wondering what's your take
that's
on
why
that too, right?
That's why it was so important for me to, not that I thought you, I really wanted you all to, you can ask anything. That's why I said that, because of that. Like I don't want people to feel uncomfortable I don't mean you two, but just in general in life.
Yeah.
I get that all the time where people are so like, I don't know what to say or what to do, you know?
It's almost like another form of phobia because it's like a fear of, even if it's a fear of offending, but it's almost like a paralyzing, totally, I don't know how to function.
Totally paralyzing. And you know, like I said, you know, there's so many ironic things about it because on the one hand, like from my perspective, like no matter what, I'm still going to be who I am no matter what happens.
Yeah.
And trans people have always existed and always will. So it's like, it's almost like, you know, what you're saying isn't you can't erase my existence.
Yeah.
And then on the other side, I think I mentioned before that it's like, I totally understand that our culture, not just our culture as a spiritual community, but also just the culture at large has been a certain way for many, many years, if not thousands of years. So I'm totally okay with, let's give this leeway to figure this out. Like, what are we going to do about bathrooms?
Yeah.
What are we going to do about sports? How is that going to play out? What are we going to do about a 4-year-old in kindergarten that wants to wear a dress? Like, that's going to take some time to work out.
Yeah.
And that's going to take some time for people to get used to, you know?
Yeah.
And I know, like, for my kids, my own kids are, 22 and 16, and they are like, even me as a trans person, they are so much more flexible in their thinking around these things. Yeah. Not flexible, but just natural.
This is naturally right. So on that note, and please, no, I don't want to like monopolize here, but
go ahead.
Again, and in that ask me anything kind of spirit.
Yeah, of course.
Well, let me like share a quick anecdote, and then the question will emerge from that. So very different context, but like when I was in, I want to say like seventh grade or something.
Yeah.
I just like had this buddy, this friend, and we just liked hanging out with each other. And of course, like seventh graders being seventh graders were like, oh, those two guys are like in love with each other. And like, we're just like, it was just like the cool kids who are also like the mean kids, in seventh grade. And I just remember being called like gay slurs and specifically like the F, like the F word, right? The other F word. The reason I'm telling this story though is like that itself is not remarkable to me. What's remarkable is like a couple of years later, like I visited, like I reconnected, I did switch schools. So I reconnected with that school and I saw a lot of those folks. And suddenly those were the folks that were like super proud of being allies.
Oh,
like they had some kind of like awakening, but it wasn't like it felt kind of like a bullshit awakening to me because it was just like,
that's too bad.
What had happened was like in the 1 or 2 years, like somehow it was like, what was cool now was to be an ally.
Right.
What was cool then was to be like this sort of like, to like throw around like right slurs. But suddenly like now it was like cool to be an ally. And so because they were just bandwagon jumpers.
You're talking about like now they're in high school?
Now they're in high school.
And so they're like, yeah. Okay.
And for some of them it might have been sincere, right? But like
it might have been maturity too.
It might have been maturity. Yeah. But I was still kind of like, maybe I was just like a little pissed and salty from that. And I was just like,
you should have been.
Like you guys are like, yeah. And like no one apologized or anything. It was just like, oh, like that wasn't really me. Like this is me. Like I'm like,
yeah.
And I just, so I'm bringing that up as different context, not specific to trans, but like it just reminds me, and maybe this is like the more cynical part of me, that's just like when things become like cool and when there's like a bandwagon, right? And then maybe this is connected also like what I think they call like rainbow capitalism or something, which is like when like all the stores now suddenly are like, look at us, like we're cool with like, it's like Target now has like, I mean, this is not like bashing Target, but like just any company.
Yeah.
So as a trans person, and especially one that like, maybe is, of an older generation, like you lived through stuff that was very different, right?
Yeah, yeah.
What's your like sort of hot take on, the kind of idea of like jumping on the trans bandwagon? Do you see that happening? Have you experienced that happening?
For sure.
And,
yeah. I mean, like you mentioned Target, they did that. And they even, I think, so what, around 2020, I think that there's like a real spike and, I think a lot of stuff, but part of it was trans acceptance, So that's when you get companies like Target and so on like that doing the rainbow washing, like you said. But Target specifically, I remember a couple of years ago, it was last year or the year before, they set up their pride display and then they got some threats and then they just folded real quick. They're like, we're taking it all down.
Yeah.
And I don't criticize them for that necessarily, but like, I don't know, what does that tell you? And I think even the difference between now and then, you do sort of see the people and entities that stuck around and the ones that didn't. But I mean, as far as I'm concerned, it's like, again, going back to when, like, I'll take any level of acceptance that's coming, even if it's fake.
Yeah.
I mean, if it's fake, if it's duplicitous, that's not good. But if it's sort of well-intentioned, sure. I think that that's better than not,
Even at the risk of, let's say, like, folks sort of, like, I mean, to use a term from like our youth, being like posers, like
posers, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, or like, because I remember
if it was
like
straight up duplicitous, I would have a problem with it. You know? But if it was like,
or just because it's like cool, so it's suddenly like I'm gonna like change my pronouns now, not because I
Oh yeah.
actually feel like that, but
Oh, yeah,
because
that
like
would-
it
yeah,
gives
that
me
would
some
feel
cred,
a little
some street
yeah, that
cred.
would feel a little weird.
Yeah.
On that same
That would
note,
feel
there
a
was a
little weird.
comedian who was like showing a graph, and they're like, according to this graph of like trans people who have become trans, by a certain like 2030 something, we'll all become trans. Like if it continues in that.
It's a
Just
pretty good
numerically, just like by like the numbers,
Because
or
there's
something.
a
Just by the
huge
number,
spike.
Because
because of the huge
yeah,
spike
yeah,
and
yeah.
like, so that's along the same lines as what
Yeah.
you're saying, the bandwagon thing. And,
Yeah. Yeah. It's not something I think too much about. I mean, I think as far as like younger people go, that might be more of a thing. But
yeah.
but I also don't really have a problem with, I don't know, not to get in the weeds, but I that's a different thing. But I think in terms of like, I don't have a problem with somebody being like, oh, wait, maybe I'm trans. I'm going to explore this. And then they say, oh, well, maybe I wasn't actually.
Right.
I don't have a problem with that. I, in general, like across the board, I'm such a big fan of people changing their mind.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh, absolutely.
And
Yeah.
being like, oh, you know what? I messed that up.
Yeah.
And maybe if it's really good, you might even be like, oh, you know what? I messed that up. I'm really sorry.
Yeah.
You know? Or even just saying like, I messed up, or I tried this thing and it didn't work out. And
Well, I mean,
I've been really
yeah.
into stoicism lately, and
Really?
that's one of the,
I didn't
got
know.
really into it.
Oh, wow.
And that's something that's a Stoic principle. Is like
Really?
allowing people and yourself to the ability to be like, you change your mind.
No, I didn't know.
Yeah.
that.
You were gonna say something. Sorry.
No, I was going to say that on this point, and we were talking about this earlier in a different context, but one of the many things I appreciate about Satsuru Maharaj is I think he also modeled that kind of
yeah,
like,
for
it's okay to
sure.
change your mind, or like,
Yeah.
I thought this
Yeah.
and I acted like that and I'm sorry. And
Yeah,
like,
for
like
sure.
at the time that was like also very radical. It was like,
Right.
especially for someone of his position
absolutely.
to be like, yeah,
Yeah, right. And actually here, I'm so glad you mentioned that, because that was my takeaway from living in the temple. That's my takeaway. One of my big takeaways from Krishna consciousness is to be like, show my faults, if I have them,
yeah.
Right.
and and I think Satsuru Maharaj is a big part of that. Not that he has faults, but like, but just to be like self-reflective like that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And also just like the power of just like, like apologizing. Like I just think
Yeah,
it's like,
100%.
and I've had little experiences like that myself, and I've heard from others anecdotally of just like, even like you talked about the temple context, right? Like you go through
Yeah.
certain things, living in a temple environment, in an ashram environment, and then to have someone like years later, maybe someone who was like kind of what we might call today like a bully towards you, to come back
Right.
and go like, I'm really sorry I treated you like that. Like
Yeah.
I was going through my own stuff, or
Yeah.
I was playing a role, or I
Yeah.
thought this was, what Krishna consciousness was about. And now I realize like, actually I was just really kind of mean and I shouldn't have done that. Like those things, I think just like they mean so much to us, right?
It really
Even years
does.
later.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's your take, like if someone says, what's the connection between like mental health and transgenderism,
Yeah.
or like mental, what did I say? Mental illness and transgenderism. What would you say to that as far as the connection?
So are you asking like if a person says like, or maybe a person is suggesting that like, oh, you're transgender, it's a mental illness.
Yeah.
Go to therapy and you'll sort it out.
Or even just the first part, because
Just the first part. I
the
would
second
say.
part, it feels a little prescriptive, which maybe is also
Yeah.
implied, but also
Well,
just the sort of like,
Yeah. So I think, I'm a kindergarten teacher. I'm not a doctor. So far be it for me to give that sort of like, so just that for context. But so my understanding of sort of how the medical community, and even with my own experience, the medical community approaches it is that, so being transgender is not a mental illness. So I think typically if you have a it's not considered in and of itself a mental illness. So, but I mentioned gender dysphoria before, but that is a diagnosable thing. So it's, so I don't know the semantics that exactly sort of, I don't know how the semantics all line up in a professional sense because I'm a kindergarten teacher. But if you have a diagnosis of gender dysphoria, then, you know, that's where you're going to get. So if you're getting any kind of medical support, then you need that in order for that to happen. Like that. So, but it's not I've never been diagnosed with a mental illness like that. And certainly, you know, just so everyone's clear, like I think the research is 100% clear that you can't therapy out being trans or being gay or whatever, you know, like it's, you know. So, does that make sense?
Yeah,
it's a little like semantic, and I think somebody that was a healthcare professional could give a better answer to that.
Right. No, I understand what you're saying. The kindergarten teacher thing really fascinates me. Did the children ever because children don't have filters and things like?
Yeah, they're awesome.
What's your experience with that?
It's really we've been talking a long time. Do you have time for a story?
Absolutely, yeah.
It's really funny.
Yeah, please.
I think it's funny. So, at the beginning of each school year, I tell the parents in my class, I'm trans, you know, in the same way I said to you, I was like, let me know if you have anything you want to ask me about or whatever. I'm always happy to talk about it like that. So, and the children in my class, they call me either Teacher Kinnicut, that's my passport name, or Miss Kinnicut. Officially, it's Teacher Kinnicut, but sometimes it just sort of seeps out. So anyways, every once in a while, I'll get like, usually it's like a 4-year-old. They'll just like look at me and be like, are you a boy or a girl? So, and then usually I'll just be like, oh, well, I was raised a boy, but I always felt like a girl and like that. So here's the funny part, though. The first time that happened, so my daughter, who goes to the school that I teach in, they were doing this thing where they were giving the 8th graders, she was an 8th grader at the time, burritos for lunch, big fat like Chipotle burritos, you know. And I'm in my class eating lunch with the kids in my class, and my daughter comes in with a half-eaten burrito, like big, massive, like Chipotle thing. I eat Chipotle sometimes, sorry. So anyway, so she comes in and she's like, I can't finish this. Will you finish it for me? And so I like look at the big thing and I was like, okay, well, if I start engaging with this, I'm not going to be able to do or say anything for like the next like 3 minutes for sure. Cause you know, like you gotta, you know, so like, I was like, okay, I'm going to go for it. So I'm like, and then like this wee boy Jack's like, are you a boy or a girl? And I'm like,
like mid-bite. Oh gosh.
I was like,
man, I love kids.
Oh boy.
It was so funny. I was like, oh my God, it's like a burrito everywhere. And I'm just like, but anyways, I thought that was funny. Yeah, the kids are, so I'll say to Jack or the little kids in my class, I'll be like, yeah, I was raised a boy, but I'm a girl. And they're like, okay.
No further
what's
questions.
for snack?
Right. They're like, moving on.
Yeah, it's really usually like that, you know, and they're way, way more flexible in there.
So we're like past 2 hours. Something
gosh,
I want to
wow.
outline is that you as a devotee are so much more than your transgenderism, like based on this
so.
podcast, you know, and I do want to ask you like stuff about Like, what kind of keeps you going in Krishna consciousness? Like, you've been a devotee for over 30 years.
Yeah. Well, I mean, full disclosure, it's like, you know, I'm probably not the only devotee listening to this that struggles with sadhana. So I absolutely struggle, you know. I mean,
You're not the only devotee in this
Yeah.
room that struggles with
Yeah,
sadhana.
exactly.
Let's put it that
I
way.
didn't want to imply anything. Yeah, so you know, I work full time. I've got 2 kids, and so my sadhana is not nearly what I want it to be. So, but you know, I'm also old enough that I'm like, oh wait, sort of can glimpse hopefully a time when things are going to slow down, and I'll have more time for sadhana, hopefully. You know, but as far as like what keeps me going, you know, honestly, it's my puja that I do, which I don't know, that maybe sounds weird, but like, I wish I could say that the thing that keeps me going is chanting japa, but it's not. But, you know, I think, you know, I have a set of deities that I've been worshiping for 25 years, almost 25 years. And, you know, the regularity of this has to be done first thing in the morning, like it has to be done. Like you can't not do this is the thing that keeps me going.
Wonderful.
I think. And I do love going to the temple, actually. I love going to the temple, especially when it's quiet. I actually really love going to Vrindavan. So I go whenever I can, but it's been a few years now. But that, and then also like reading, I think about 2 years ago, I started, maybe this is obvious, but this really was helpful for me. Like I was like the deities, I was like, I'm not going to look at my phone until I read, even if it's 5 minutes,
Right.
you know?
Oh, that's
So I
great.
get out of the
Love that.
shower, and so I have a Satsu Raj book, and then usually a Prabhupada book, and then I'll just read, even if it's 5 minutes.
minutes.
So
Nice.
almost every day. So those are the things that keep me going. And then, you know, like you said before, it's the Sangha, you know, I mean, all my old friends from you know, way back, but they live in different places, but, you know, they keep me going for sure.
Right. I love that.
For sure.
Can I
Actually, I think many of them are common friends.
Yeah, I think
for
we do
sure.
have a lot of
We
common
have a lot
friends,
of
which is kind of
common
cool.
friends,
Shout out Brahma Muhurta.
Yeah.
He's an awesome guy.
I wanna just
meanest man.
I want to elevate one thing you said, which like it was just, I think, such a beautiful thing, and I didn't want it to get lost in the mix. But the way I heard you say it is something like, when you're talking about your sadhana, you're like, my sadhana is not what I would love, what I'd like it to be, and I feel like I really resonate with that, and I appreciate the shift in language from like my sadhana is not what it should be to like my sadhana is not what I would like it to be.
Yeah.
Because I think like for many of us, especially in this season of life,
It's also probably not what it should be, but
but even just like, I know for me, maybe I'm just projecting,
I
but like for
appreciate
me,
what you're saying.
like I liked making that shift, especially in this season of life, because I feel like there's so much like guilt tied into like, oh, I should be doing this and I'm not, and then
it's
I'm
overwhelming.
but to be like,
yeah,
I'm doing something.
yeah,
I would like to do more because I would like to have a more meaningful
Yeah.
relationship with Krishna. I'd like to spend more time with Krishna.
Yeah.
Not because the external institution or force or whatever is
Yeah.
holding a gun to my head, but because like, gosh, this is an opportunity to be closer to Krishna or to spend more time with Krishna. And that's where I would like to go. I'm not quite there yet, but I want to go there, right? Like that, we talk about this so much, I feel like.
Two things on that. One thing that I feel like as we get older as devotees, we realize that our sadhana is not tied to like how much Krishna loves us.
Yes.
That
Yes.
that he'll love us unconditionally. He's like Karuna Sindhu. He's an ocean of mercy. Like think about that for a second. Ocean, like an ocean's huge. Like
Yeah.
okay, we're not where our sadhana does, where we want it to be. Does that mean Krishna doesn't love us or that he loves us any less? No, absolutely not. The second thing I wanted to say was I heard this an amazing thing about Jiva Goswami says in like Sandarbha somewhere that to make advancement, we just literally have to think ourselves of Krishna's servant. Like we just have to continually remind ourselves that we're Krishna's servant. Like, even if we don't hit the mark on other things, if we still have that, like, abhiman or that, that kind of, like, what does abhiman mean again? Like the conception?
Yeah, I mean, it's usually
Or
used in the sense of like a
derogatory
kind of
thing,
like a
right?
pride, like a sense
Right,
of pride.
right. Okay, maybe that's
but
not the right
but
word.
I think you
but
could reverse it. But
the main point being that we're Krishna's
like I
servant.
belong to Krishna.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
belong to Krishna. Yeah.
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 So I just thought that was interesting.
Yeah.
The yeah, so a couple things on that, like, so not that my puja is super rudimentary, but at the beginning of my puja, I like to do this verse. I'm not going to even try and say it because I'm too nervous, but
It's okay.
this one verse that it's Naham Vipro,
Yes.
like that. Yeah. So it's kind of like that. Like, it's like, I'm not this, I'm not this, I'm not this,
Yeah.
I'm not this. I'm a devotee of Krishna.
Yes.
And
Well, that's like a Bhuta Shuddhi, right? That's like
Bhuta
that's what I was
that's
going to say.
Exactly, yeah.
Because like my understanding is that like that Bhuta Shuddhi is to like replace all the material aspects of us with a spiritual one, but we can't do that because we're like these Kali Yuga creatures. So we say this one that focuses on the spiritual, that it's just the bhakti.
Yeah.
So I like
This is
that.
Mahaprabhu himself saying this. This
Right,
is like,
right.
Yeah.
So it's just the bhakti. So and I think that there was not to bring it back to this, but I think that there was maybe this is interesting. There was a point in my journey of sort of how am I going to live as a trans person? I was often worried about, I think what you just said, of I don't want being transgender to overtake my personality, and certainly not overtake trying to be a devotee.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, that was so important to me. And that was one of the reasons why for a long time I was like, I'm just going to bottle it in and not affirm myself outwardly, until I came to the point where not affirming was so much of an hurdle that was becoming too much more of a disturbance than anything else. So I was like, this is, but anyways, I love this Bhuta Shuddhi idea because it's just getting rid of all this, and then it's just the bhakti.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wish I could say the verse well, which I don't. But anyways, yeah.
Well, it's been so nice talking to you, getting to know you.
Yeah,
And I've seen you around a lot when I was,
I'm trying to
in
remember
the
where, but
90s. I was a little kid.
you're a little kid.
Yeah.
But I think that mutual friend thing is also like a
Mutual
connection
friend thing,
point,
for
right?
sure, yeah.
Like
Yeah.
Brahma and others, Madan
Radhi,
Gopal, like
Madan
that's
Gopal,
that's so
Madan
cool that you have
Gopal,
that
yeah.
history. Yeah. and
Yeah,
like-
yeah. I hope he doesn't mind I name checked him.
I'm sure he doesn't mind. But anything else to add?
No, I'm just so grateful for this.
Well,
this
I
time.
thank you for allowing me to come. I'm super embarrassed about putting myself forward, but
I'm glad you did. I'm glad you did.
I do feel that you mentioned activist stuff, and I want to also quietly speak for trans people, and also in the context of our spiritual tradition.
Sure.
So, and I don't know where that goes. And honestly, in a way, I don't know where that goes. And I'm not actually even asking for it to go anywhere, because
but that's
I'm
yeah.
still going to do my thing. But,
That itself is like a very Krishna conscious, right? That's like going back to like even second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, right? It's like you have your adhikar is to like share your voice, share your story, and then like whatever the outcome is, it's like actually not in our hands anyway, right? Just like offer it to Krishna.
Good point.
Yeah.
good.
Okay, well, thank you,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Madhava.
Lalita. Thank you.
I'm going to put Lalita Madhava's email in the description if you're comfortable
Sure.
with it. I'm sure devotees would like to talk to you.
Yeah,
get in touch with you.
absolutely. I would absolutely love that.
Yeah. Okay. Hare Krishna. Have a good night. Thank you, Young Akash. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
Haribo.
Haribo.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare.